It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, April 19th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is starting to rack up a big list of questions going into this offseason.
So many questions.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly game. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. You can find our show over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, we did get the news later in the day on Wednesday that they officially sent a few of the guys down to the Phantoms that we talked about so that they could be involved in the playoffs down there, assuming that happens, which I'm pretty sure it will. But Ollie Lixel, Ronnie Attard, Adam Ginning, and Bobby Brink are all assigned to the Phantoms. Tonight, they have their opportunity to clinch a playoff position with only 1 point. So fingers crossed they
Just
can
get
get
a
it
point.
done.
Yeah.
Just get a point and then ride out the weekend and get Alexei Kolosov some playing time. That's all
Yeah.
I want from the
Yeah.
Phantoms.
Sounds easy. We'll see.
Yes, we will see. As we mentioned yesterday on the show, Danny Briere and John Tortorella are not doing their postseason media availability until today at 11 a.m. Depending on when you're listening to the show, it may or may not have happened.
Wait, did I miss it already? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know. Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. But I think that it'll be interesting to hear what they have to say. We'll, of
For
course,
sure.
discuss it more on the Monday show, unless something crazy happens and news breaks, and we'll get that to you sooner than that. But yeah, I am very intrigued what they are going to have to say.
Yeah, me too. We'll see about the coaching staff. That'll be number one question, I'm sure. I don't think they're going to get much clarity on John from the game. If he knew anything about the other scorer when he pulled the goalie, I don't think he's going to tell
He
anything.
says no, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. Wait, he says no, meaning he already said no.
Didn't know.
He didn't know. Okay, I missed
Yeah.
that. So, okay, and that's fine. I still don't know why you wouldn't have your video guy watching it and letting you know, right? Just seems so easy, doesn't it?
Well,
The
things are
video
never
guy's just sitting there.
easy.
He's just waiting for something to challenge. So, like, you're telling me he can't get updates or have a live feed in the
I don't
21st
know.
century? Does that sound feasible? How come Dylan Strome knew?
I don't know.
On the
The power
bench?
keeps going out in that building all the
No,
time.
no.
So
But hold on. See, I'm going to get something digging deeper here. How come
no, I
Dylan?
know. I
How
know.
come Dylan Strome knew when he told me he knew it was 4-3, but then he like took a shift and he lost track? He knew.
Look,
Okay,
yeah,
fine. All right.
it's
Just saying.
fine. Honestly, I don't care either way.
No,
at
I mean
this
it's just
point.
it's just one of those things you would like to know so you have an understanding about the strategy. Like, hey, if he wanted to eliminate Pittsburgh and Washington, then just say so. Be cool. We'd all like
Yeah.
to hear that. That's
Or
all.
Pittsburgh and Detroit.
Pittsburgh and Detroit. Sorry. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it would be cool.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Anyway, that'll be an interesting thing to follow up on. Some vaguely Flyers news in that Jeff Carter announced his retirement and got to score a goal in his last game, which was pretty nice to see. And I think that, people, the churn comes up again about the trade and was it worth it? And once again, I have to maintain that the Flyers won that trade because you have to compare it to Columbus and what they got out of the
Right.
trade. And they got Jeff Carter for half a season, who was miserable to be there,
He
and
was he
that's
was
nothing.
causing all kinds of trouble. Look,
Yeah.
I have no love lost for Jeff Carter. So if you're going to try and get me to say something good about him on the show, it's not going to
No,
happen. It's just
no,
not going to happen. I know.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just
Yeah.
suggesting that if you're talking about who won the trade, the Flyers won that trade. They
Plus,
got
they
Jake.
had to go. Those guys had to go. There was things going on that the team couldn't, brush off anymore.
Yeah, like, you have to look at it that way because we got Sean Couturier with that
Yep.
pick and Jake Voracek.
Right.
No-brainer,
Yeah.
no-brainer who won that trade, and has
Yeah.
Columbus won a cup? No.
No.
So, uh,
Although I feel like we
no-brainer
don't need
right
to
there.
rub it in on Columbus right now. They're going through a bad time.
No, that is also true. That is also true, but we're rubbing it in on Columbus from 2010 or
Right.
2011, right?
Although
So,
although are they in any better
2011.
shape in 2024?
No, they
No.
are not. They are not, sad to say. All right. We have big questions going into this off season here. You alluded to one of them, which is a big question on my list, which maybe we'll find out today. Will Rocky Thompson be back next season?
I'd say it's 50-50. It should be 100-0 that he's gone, but I think it's 50-50. I don't know why. I just have this weird feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think that John Tortorella is really loyal to his guys,
Uh-huh.
and this is a guy that he picked to
Right.
be on his staff. But I do think that you just look at results, and Brad Shaw has done outstanding work for this
Mhm.
team. And Rocky Thompson, the biggest thing he's responsible for, not great, Bob.
No.
So,
Like if Bradshaw has a twin brother, hire him.
yeah, no kidding. No kidding. And I think that it should not be an easy no-brainer to bring him back. And I certainly hope there's at least some sort of explanation, or people ask
Right.
Tortorella and Briere and say, look, the power play has been the weakest part of this team. Like, what are you going to do about it coaching wise next year?
Right.
So we'll see if that happens. I think, we're going to get into in the next segment individual players in terms of will they be back or not. But I think, an important question to ask, sort of aside of that, is where does Rasmus Ristolainen fit into all of this? Because I think that, if you're looking at the rebuild and getting young guys involved in the team, Risto was gone. Like, what do you do with that? And, the Flyers have him under contract for another 3 years at
Right.
5.1. So, we'll dig into the cap stuff on a later show, but that's
Yeah.
gonna be a huge part of that discussion. I think, you
Yes.
could ask similarly, although there's less of a cap impact regardless, of Nick Deslauriers, because he was, like, on the wayside by the end of the season.
I mean, what would I do? I just send him down to Lehigh. I'd say, hey, Nick, thanks. You can collect the rest of your check in Lehigh. If you want to keep playing, you can keep playing.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. That's the way it's going to go.
Yeah,
Because it's a
absolutely.
variable contract. You won't have to pay that much. And that's what I would do.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We have so many more questions to ask of the Flyers this off season. We just started mentioning the cap. There's some questions related to that in general, and we are going to do that coming up next. We all know how important life insurance is, but it can be overwhelming trying to find the right policy on your own. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage, and some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. I know it feels so much better to have insurance and not have to worry about being covered, and your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. So, Policy Genius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the show notes to get your free life insurance quotes and to see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. Are you watching sports on cable TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, your free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next week on the show, we will have those Phantoms results for you and hopefully a playoff preview for them. We're going to start digging into those topics like player postseason deep dives, NHL draft coverage, cap management, all of that and more. So speaking of cap management, I think just the big question, we'll dig into those little details later, but are they going to do things this offseason to look for more cap space, or are they going to spend to the limit? What do you think?
No, I think they should clear some of the dead weight out. If that turns out to be Risto, then it's Risto. If it's Cam Atkinson, it's Cam Atkinson. But I think you have to start clearing some roster spots and giving some other guys a chance to win them. So, and I think you need to weaponize the cap space you have left. So if that's, don't spend just because it's there. I don't think they should do that. And so we'll see. I mean, sure, if my intuition tells me they're going to pick up a defenseman like they've been picking up every year, so fine, you do that, that's fine. But I wouldn't do much more than that. We heard Cam Atkinson say, "Hey, I'll prove everybody wrong. I'll be back next year." Well, I don't know. The Flyers should give him a chance. That's just
Right.
the way it is. They could probably try and trade him. I don't know how tradable he is. They should definitely not give up any assets to trade him. But he's a conundrum right now. And Sean Couturier is an interesting one because he's going to impact next year. He thinks it's mental what he was going through, but sometimes players can't admit when they've sort of like lost a step or it's not going the way they want it to. And sometimes they have to be hit with a sledgehammer over the head to kind of realize that this is the way it is now and I've got to change. I don't think he's there yet. And that's going to be an interesting thing too, because you really don't know where he's going to play in the lineup. So based on that, and that's a huge cap expenditure for the next century, seemingly.
Right. That is absolutely true. But I think that I think he does understand it to a degree. I think he doesn't want to verbalize it in front of people yet.
Okay.
I just think that if he got healthy scratched and he's been having issues with the coach and wanting to figure out how to get more ice time, he knows. Like he knows what's going on with himself. And I think he knows himself better than anybody. But I do think there's a difference between knowing it yourself and admitting it to the world. I think those are two very different things. And I think he's going to take this off season to figure it out and see what he can do physically, like training wise this off season to heal up and get stronger and just get, as fine tuned as he can, having a better, quote unquote, healthy off season as opposed to recovering from surgery and see how that goes. And then he can reset next year.
Yeah, and I do want to point something out to you because you had brought up something like, "Hey, it would be nice if they had some kind of communication with the players, telling them what they might be doing with them." Well, Travis Sanheim trained all summer to be on the left side, and he was switched to the right side immediately when he got there. So I don't think they're gonna do what you want them to do because John changes his mind, and once he does that, that whole training changed. Luckily, Sanheim was able to, roll with that, but not everybody can.
Right. I don't think that's a question we're looking at this offseason, though. That's
Well,
just
for other players, it could be.
for the players, it could be. It's not for us.
Okay,
That's for the players to
that's fair.
figure out. But you're talking about how players potentially returning or not is related to the cap. We do know that the cap is going to increase about 4 million.
Yeah.
We don't have the final figure yet. And so, is Danny Briere going to think about that space in terms of burying dead cap money and think about it that way? Or is he going to think about it as an opportunity, to re-sign the players that he wants to, or get that one free agent to backstop the blue line?
Yeah, I mean, they could get a blue liner, but they should also clear cap space. So I don't think one should have to do anything with the other. Uh, there's too many red herrings out there, guys like Jacob Chikrin, who still have a year left on the deal. He says he doesn't know what's going on. There's too many things like that we're going to hear about. And I think, I just don't think they should play around with any of that because, again, sometimes you're getting these guys and they're 27, 28. Sometimes they're going to be really good. And sometimes, like, what you get is what you get now. And so I just feel like stay away from that. I think more of the known is better than the unknown, but I have a feeling it's going to be a rootin' tootin'. We don't know what the hell is going on off season. I just have that feeling. The Wild West.
Well, I think that's interesting because that's really the next big question, right? How are they going to balance prospect development with vets in terms of signings, roster construction, and are they going to set up training camp to facilitate one versus the other in terms of how they're evaluating players?
They're just going to answer yes to everything. Yes, we're going to get better. Yes, we're going to evaluate players. Yes, we're going to keep rebuilding. Yes, but the answer can't be yes to everything. But that's what they would answer.
Okay, but we're not talking about what they're going to say. We're talking about what they're going to do. Those
I
are two
know,
different
but
things.
I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to keep doing everything because they're bringing John back. And so that leads me to believe that it's going to be very similar to this year as far as how players play, can break into the lineup, and everything else. So I do think the answer is yes to all of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's, how much of a thumb is Danny Briere going to put on the scale versus last year? I think that, another question that comes to mind for all of this is, was this year a honeymoon phase? And is it going to be different in year two?
Well, it's always going to be different year two with a new GM and a coach like John Tortorella, but I don't envision John backing down from anything. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I just think like they've been sort of hunky dory. Everybody's on the same page this year. Is
Yeah.
that going to change next year because they have to accomplish a certain set of goals? Where we've always said this past season was a get out of jail free card in a lot of ways, where
Yeah.
they could be a little riskier, try different things, see how it goes with this personnel, and then figure out the plan adjustments moving forward to get where they want to in terms of Mitchkoff's arrival and that timing. Now we've done that season. We got to be a little bit more focused and tighter managed, right?
Yes, I agree. I don't know if that's going to happen. I really feel like uh, everybody will back John while the team is winning. But if he has problems like he did this year, late in the year, like you're scratching Couturier, you're doing some of these things that certainly people on the team were not happy about, and you're losing, then they're going to look at things differently. Because then they're going to be like, okay, John's riding them really hard. We have these problems, and now maybe at that point they would question what's going to happen, in the future. But he's going to have to lose a fair amount for that to happen.
Yeah, I think, that's entirely possible. I just think that that's something we're going to have to be cognizant of starting
Yeah.
this off season. Are we going to see hints of that honeymoon phase being over, going into a more like focused, direction oriented season this year to work toward that future goal? And I think that, that also brings to mind some questions about some other players. We've talked about Cam Atkinson so far, but what's going to happen with Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee, you know?
So I think Morgan Frost is gone. I think he was really good in the way he handled everything. I think he had a really good season. I think by all metrics, his season was very successful and he built on off of last year, but the coach doesn't see it that way. So if there's an opportunity to trade him, they're going to trade him because I'm sure Danny Briere is going to go, who do I have to work with here to kind of, offer up and see if we can get a better player. And I think Frost is going to be first on the list.
Yeah, I think if anybody, Frost would be the first on the list. You and I have talked ad nauseum about the fact that we think it's a bad idea and we like Morgan
Yes.
Frost. Obviously, we'd look at a return and make an evaluation at that
Right.
point. But I do think Morgan Frost would be a very good asset to have for this team moving forward, especially with his flexibility and willingness to
Yes.
just do anything. And he can make it work doing almost anything he's asked. So I think that's important. Talked about Joel Farabee and that he didn't have quite as good a season as we would have liked. And, he got moved around a little bit too.
I
Is
mean, his
this an
points were good.
opportunity here?
So I think the coach is slightly at odds with the way he plays. And so the points were there, but maybe the zone entries weren't. But I don't think he got the right power play time either,
No.
to be honest, because he's very good on the power play when he's locked in. So I just think if somebody comes asking for Farabee, they're going to listen. I don't think they should. I think Joel Farabee, you should just tuck away and keep working with because he's a gamer and he will do whatever you want. He'll give his full effort all the time. You never see Joel Farabee not giving his full effort. But I do feel like, he hasn't played the way the coach would like him to play.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree on both counts. I think they should keep him, and I agree that the evaluation of him has been a little off
Yeah.
by the coaching staff there. And then there's the ever-present Scott Lawton rumor mill. We talked a lot yesterday about how important he is to the team from a cultural, emotional, and a hockey perspective. He's a huge part of that power kill and why it's been so successful. So I just think it's a bad idea across the board. And I think that if you look at the fact that he was not traded at deadline, they were looking for a first, I think, in return for him and didn't get it. And to me, that's the bar because the intangibles are so high with him that if you can't get the most outrageous return for him, you keep him.
Yeah, I think from a draft pick perspective, you're right. But if there's some sort of big trade, he might get thrown into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always possible. We're just like knocking on wood that it does not.
Yeah,
All
I'm with you.
right.
I think he's worth more to the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will continue to ask these questions moving forward and start to try and answer them. In the meantime, we asked you a big question about this season out there. And was this season a success for the Flyers? Put out a poll on our YouTube channel. Y'all answered. We are going to talk about those results and some top comments coming up next.
We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's the second period break and the scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and biggest empires, the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Yep. Charge other players for rent on your iconic properties. You could even work with your friends to crack open community chests in tournaments to get a few extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go. Now free on the App Store or Google Play.
So the big poll for y'all out there was, do you think this season was a success for the Flyers? And you all resoundingly said yes. It was 85 to 15% here, which is a huge margin.
It is. It's a thrash.
And I think that, we agreed with you with the asterisk about some of the prospect
Right. There was a little
development
nuance in there,
there.
but we mostly agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it's good to see that if this is indicative of the fan base as a whole, that that is kind of what y'all are thinking out
Well, it is.
there.
Every Flyers fan listens to the show. So, I mean, it's obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it is based on what I've seen is that, there are little questions here and there, but for this season, the team outperformed expectations by a mile, and we got some prospect development
Right.
here. And so a lot of y'all brought up some good points. Elliot said that the defense was the highlight of the season. Everyone improved and gives his hats off to Torts and Brad Shaw. Wants Drysdale to get more involved, but I think that, yeah, that is a huge, huge aspect of this season is that, with everything that went on with the Flyers blue line, I think, you look to what we talked about yesterday with Sanheim and York taking steps forward, and then Zamula being, through circumstance because of waivers, being truly given the opportunity to get to where he need to, and he absolutely thrived.
Yeah. Zamula thrived. I don't know what he means by Drysdale getting more into it, because if you're saying defense, that's the reason Anaheim was willing to give him up. It's going to be hard to get him to be anything more than average as far as a defender. The rest, he's got a higher skill rate than York, and you have to accentuate that. So if you mean that, that's great. But that also comes from coaching. The coaching staff has to have the faith in him to let him do those things.
Yeah, and Elliot also mentions, the lack of ice time for some of the younger guys, and says player trade Frost and Brink, tired of seeing young guys bench for extended times. Yes, we
Yeah.
agree.
And also, whether this comes up or not, another thing that really annoyed me the other day with Drysdale, with the way they were using him, is I saw a Dave Haxtell power play breakout where there were 4 passes before they ever got into the offensive zone for the other team. And I'm like, what does this do?
Nothing. What did we learn? Nothing.
Right.
All right. Andrew, who's been a long time listener, said, while I'm disappointed they didn't make the playoffs, playing a game 82 that meant something was awesome. It was more than I expected at the beginning of the season. Yep. 100%.
Can't argue that.
Yeah. And Bingy Boodle, who's been a listener for a while, said now they need to get high-end talent as well as the success of bettering the guys already with the club. Easier said than done.
Oh yeah. See,
Yeah.
we there's no notes here. We both thought that, and it's easier said than done.
Yeah, but that is the absolute right attitude to have. Sean Fitzpatrick said, I'd say so. Games meant something at the end of the season. Here's an important point we haven't talked about yet. Relations between front office and the fan base definitely improved.
Yes.
And that has been a huge aspect to the
No
success
question.
of the organization this year. They did so much more like activities and things during the games that were fan friendly, even to the point of not raising ticket prices. And
Yeah, I saw a lot of fans getting paraded through the press box. I saw Keith Jones, Danny Briere, Dan Hilferty, a lot of people taking pictures with fans. All that has changed. All that's for the better.
Yeah, a lot more town halls with season ticket holders.
Right.
A lot more upfront communication. I think all of that has been really, really good in the organization. He also says, and Briere in year 1 as a GM proved he can make solid personnel decisions and be trusted in continuing the rebuild. And I think that's largely true. I think there are a couple little hiccups, but I think, you could see how much he has grown in terms of the moves he didn't make as much as by the moves he did.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. I also think there's an impending tete-a-tete that he'll go through with John, and we'll see how that works out. Like that's going to be an important part of his growth.
Yeah, and lastly, White's 32 said, honestly, just for the fact of seeing Sanheim and York take leaps forward, and could not agree more.
No, that's good. I mean, they definitely did.
Yeah, yeah. So really happy to see that. That will do it for our show today. I do want to mention I watched the Arizona Coyotes final game last night as of recording. So on Wednesday night. But what an emotional roller coaster
Oh, I'm
that
sure it
entire
was.
night was, and the broadcast. And I just want to call attention to what Todd Walsh, one of the broadcasters for the Yotes, said at the end of the game. He quoted Fred Shero at the end of his broadcast, and kind of altered the famous quote from Fred Shero. And I just thought it was just so heartfelt, saying Coyotes fans, we walk together forever, we win this game,
Right.
we live forever. And so this is similar to that. And just once again, my heart goes out to all the Yotes fans out
Yeah, I feel
there.
bad for the
And
fans. I feel bad for
it's
the
tough.
workers. I know some of the workers will get jobs with the Roadrunners, but I got to tell you, the players are happy. All the players are happy. Like we're starting to hear little comments now about how the accommodations were for them playing in game. So it's a very we've never seen a situation quite like this in a lot of
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. And just the fact that the Yotes came into existence from a relocation, and
That's
now they're
true.
dealing with it themselves, and it just must be so, like, I can't even imagine. All right, that will actually do it for today's show. We'll be back next Monday talking Danny and Torts, nemesis of the week. And if you've got mailbag questions you want us to answer, you can send them in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's now available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. Find Locked On Sports Today available on the free Fire TV channels app.